Hey everybody, my name is Rydo. The Steam Autumn Sale is taking place right now. It ends November 27th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And not coincidentally, this is happening right around the Black Friday, Cyber Monday sales period. So, what we're going to do today is we're going to compare what is my wish list, which I have spent a lot of time cleaning up recently. Starting December 1st, I'm going to have videos, very long videos, in which I go through every game on my wish list, talk about those games, and decide whether they really deserve to be covered on my YouTube channel or not. So we're coming from this perspective of a very cleaned up wish list, which is important because this video is going to be a little bit e-beggy. In the sense that I ask people to support my channel if they want to give a one-time gift by friending me on YouTube. Well, not friending me on YouTube, but friending me on Steam and gifting me a game off my wish list. I did want to start off here a little zoomed out further than I'd like to point out that Steam gift cards can also be gifted. So if you wanted, for instance, to purchase a gift card and send it through Steam, you can do that, and when you do something like that, you can select certain amounts, dollar amounts. Say, if you wanted to do a $5 gift card or a custom amount over $5, and yeah, then you'd have to log in, and then you'd have to, there'd be a button over here to click gift to a friend. I forgot about that part, that it would show it has to log in again, which is odd because I only logged in just a few seconds ago. So yeah, gift cards are an option. Otherwise, you can just purchase a game and gift it to a friend. Whether you want to gift a game to me because you'd like to see me cover it or because it's on my wish list, it doesn't really matter to me. Anything that gets gifted to me has top priority, almost 100% guaranteeing that I'm gonna cover it. But I'm not gonna lie, if you gifted me some horribly awful looking game that I have no interest at playing whatsoever, I may only spend like 5 minutes saying thanks for the game, but that's not really something that's in my wheelhouse. And that is part of the reason why I spent so much time, and you're gonna see starting December 1st every day, pretty much till the end of the year, why so much effort was spent cleaning up the wish list. Because of the wish list, if we just look at the first page, and let's go ahead and zoom in to let's go with 125%. That's a much more nicer way to scroll when looking. You can see the front page deals. A lot of things are on the wish list. A lot of games are not on the wish list. I've moved them to a secondary follow list, which doesn't work quite as well as the wish list does. And I'm going to come back probably in March, if not earlier, and start looking at games and saying, well, is this game that's now got some reviews, or is this game that's now out of early access still good enough to be worth playing? Raft is a great example of a game like that, where Raft in its early days was pretty rough. Now it's pretty polished, but it's also been like a year since it was first out in early access. So then the question becomes, is it relevant? Do people really want to play Raft still? Did people ever really want to play Raft, or was it just getting covered by big YouTubers and Twitch streamers? So it's not super helpful to look at the front page deals. You can just see what's on the wish list, which is a lot of things, and that's not an easy way for it to break down. We could, of course, just browse and scroll down here, but there's a better system. Inherently, also, I own quite a lot of games, so it's not an insane thought to think that there are a lot of games that are on sale, depending on how big your own personal Steam library is, that aren't really worth having. See, this game, for instance, should totally be on the wish list, and it probably is. It's just that sometimes that does not show up. Let's see. We'll just click on wish list, add to wish list. There. So yeah, it was on the wish list, it was just not logging in, so the front page was not even that helpful. Unfortunately, short of just going to my profile and looking at every single game I have over 900, and that doesn't mean I've played all 900 or I've covered all 900, but I have certainly covered a lot of them on my YouTube channel. There's no great way to see what's on sale compared to what you own. There's also no real great way to see games that you've installed but were free and then you uninstalled them. So there's this weird secret list in Steam of games you technically own, but you can't really find them. Or at least I can't find the page. If somebody knows how to do that, that would be helpful. So let's move over to the wish list, and this will be what we can break it down to. I don't believe this empty wishlist button is there by default. I think this is a plugin, and there we can see another Chrome plugin that launches, stops me from having duplicate tabs to save RAM. So it closed the duplicate tab because I had already opened it, and it sorted, reloaded the one that had been put to sleep. That's a plugin called the Great Suspender. It's very helpful for browsing. So we're on the wish list now, and we're at my ranked order, which is nice and all, but honestly it's not going to be super useful. For the most part, I would say the ranked order shows the top the top 100 games in the ranked order are games I really would like to own. I almost certainly want to cover. Some of these games are adult games, and I have yet to figure out a way I could cover them, but I'd still like to support the industry and own them. But it doesn't really speak too much towards the discount. So once we're getting here at like Origami, that's probably we're probably hitting the end of games that should be at the top of the wish list. I'll tell you what the line would probably be. Yeah, all of these games are really high priority still. And you'd think these were all alphabetical since I went through the wish list alphabetically, but that's apparently not how it works. It seems like it's kind of random. I think GTA Vice City would be a good line to say that's probably not supposed to be at the top of my wish list. But no, I'm still seeing some things. Well, I'm getting distracted. Myst 3 and Myst 4 are games that 100% were high priority. Like, I'd love to play Myst 3 tomorrow if I could just afford it. There's definitely a problem here with a lot of games being very expensive, and in the previous Steam sales I certainly have gone down the realm of buying a bunch of games that are cheap 50-cent games, and then you run into this situation where they don't take that long to cover and they're not that interesting. Mobius Final Fantasy would be a great example. Yeah, that's probably the line of, yeah, I would say Mobius Final Fantasy, and once you hit these Final Fantasy games, that would be the line at which the rest of the games below that point, which you can see is the vast majority of them, are games I'm interested in playing, but they're not top tier. They're not something that I'm hyper interested in, and as time goes by, as I play similar games, I may change my opinion on that. Final Fantasy is a great example of that. I probably should cover at least one Final Fantasy game. I don't know if I want to play all 18 plus iterations of Final Fantasy games. Maybe you just play the three trilogy games in the Final Fantasy 13 series. Maybe you just play Final Fantasy 7 Remake when that comes out. And then after playing a Final Fantasy game, maybe I don't feel much of a need to play any other JRPGs. So all those other Japanese RPGs would potentially get, at the very least, put at the very bottom of the wish list, if not completely removed. So ranked order is helpful very much if you wanted to give me like a top tier game that I absolutely wanted to cover. Although, if you are going to gift me something, please try to save some money if you care about saving money. So buying, say, the Nonary games at $45 would be very nice, and possibly the best deal you could ever get. These niche Japanese escape room game series, both of these are the Zero Escape series, but there's actually 2 games in this and 1 game in here. They probably don't go on discount that often, but discount is where we want to start. We want to see the games that are at the highest discount during your sale so that we could potentially save the most. This comes from a potentially flawed assumption that I'm going to buy most of these games. That's a pretty good assumption. There's about 2,300 games on the wish list. There's 900 games I've already purchased. It's not unrealistic that over the course of the next decade, most of the games on the wish list do get purchased. It's slightly more of a bigger question about whether they actually get covered on my YouTube channel, because that's where I really have to spend my effort and spend time on. So we have Ed and Harvey, which is a point-and-click adventure. You'll see throughout this that I'm a sucker for point-and-click adventures, particularly Daedalic and their dark German style of storytelling. The thing about this game, because it's from Daedalic, and you really wouldn't be able to tell this, is that this is a game I could get for $1.49. It's probably never going to get much cheaper than that. And it's part of a bundle. It's a part of several bundles, in fact. So if I get a piece of a bundle, most bundles work this way on Steam. Some of them don't. You have to be kind of careful. But if you get pieces of bundles, then those games and the value of those games are removed, so that buying and completing your collection through that bundle becomes cheaper. So slowly over time, if you get the best deal for one game, and then you get the best deal for another game, and then there's a third game in that bundle, you might be able to buy that bundle and get a better deal on that third game than you ever could separately. Here we have an independent game called Tiny and Big Grandpa's Leftovers. I'm not sure how much we're going to scroll through this, but you can see this is about discount, not so much about price. You could definitely get suckered, and I have done that with like hidden object games. I bought probably too many of those, too many bad games in general that were 99 cents or even 49 cents, which I believe is the lowest that anything can be priced at before it has to just be free on Steam. So there's this point where I want to make sure that the games I want to get are good. Now, that probably also means that I'm saying that these games at these prices are worth owning or checking out. It comes down to your own personal preference. Some people would say $3 is nothing to play a game. Some people might say $3 is still a lot of money to play a game. Some people might say a game like Just Cause 2 doesn't need to be covered at all, even at $1.49. Again, this might be a bundle for the entire Just Cause series, though. Some people might say that the Kane and Lynch for 99 cents is too expensive, whereas other people might say, hey, that has some relevancy and it should be covered. Notice these are both from 2010, and most of the games on the wishlist now are marked at least positive. I didn't go through it and demand things be rated very positive because, you know, my taste might be a little bit different. Here we have another Ed and Harvey point and click adventure game. So while the previous one up here was $1.49, the other one is $1.99. You could probably buy a bundle and get both games if you intend on doing that cheaper. Night of the Rabbit, I believe, is also Edna and Harvey. So there's like a trilogy there. Let's just continue to go down. Now there's a few games that I've made exceptions for and had on my wish list. I'm not 100% sure why Solarix is there, but that also is a factor of I just have looked through so many of these games I've forgotten about things. So I'm trying to see things that would make sense. Because there's a couple different ways you might want to come from this. This is like a adult visual novel furry game, which apparently some furry website got hacked and all the 400,000 users got their information exposed. So that sucks. Certainly bad security on the internet. A lot of visual novels. I'm not 100% sure I'm going to cover any visual novels on my YouTube channel, but I'm trying to keep a collection just in case I decide to go down that route. I would say Quantum Conundrum is worth it for 98 cents. It is careful, though. You have to be careful about every game and look at the DLC. I don't want to click on any game and get away from this page because it'll take too long to load back. It is quite a long wish list. But I'm fairly certain Quantum Conundrum does have some paid DLC, so you're going to have to be aware of that. Generally speaking, I want to own all the DLC so before I cover a game, which can be a problem certainly if somebody gifts me a game, because then I might have to spend some extra money personally to go buy the DLC. And often a season pass AAA game might go on sale for $20, and then the season pass and the DLC bumps it right back up to $60, which is quite an investment. The Legacy of Kain is a niche classic series, so I want to own all of them, and at 97 cents it starts to make sense. A lot of these old games too, it's just a matter of I want them to still make some money and own them, just to show some pride in it and potentially convince the developers to make a remake. The Legacy of Kain series in particular and the Blood Omen series is very, very prime to be made in a remaster if they could do it. Same is kind of true for like the Trine series. It's struggling. Its developer is struggling to stay afloat, and the Deus Ex series is owned by Square Enix, so it's under threat of being shut down. And then there's also fighting games. I'm not 100% sure which fighting games I'd want to cover as a series, but I'm certainly thinking about several different genres that I haven't stuck my toe into as far as styles of games. I'm trying to expand more. Let's see. I've seen a lot of people streaming this game or the sequel to this game on YouTube, so there's some small relevancy there on top of the fact that it's very positive. Generally speaking, when I'm looking for sales, whether it's for video games or other things, I'm looking for things that are at least 70% off. So it's gonna be a quicker experience, frankly, once we start hitting 70% or 50%, because that's not really much of a deal. Silent Hill Homecoming is an odd choice because There aren't any other Silent Hill games on Steam. Not really sure I want to play Sega Bass Fishing, but I basically want to own all the Sega games. Let's see, there's an entire Hyper Dimension Neptunia series, or Neptunia series in general, that I could get if I decide to go down that route. Haiti is a very weird game, certainly, at $2.99. It's almost like a joke game that turned out to be pretty good. Whereas Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City is a pretty awful game, but I want to own all the Resident Evil games and try and cover them all. Castlevania Lords of Shadow makes a lot of sense to buy, but it's still pretty expensive at $7.99. Like, this is from 2014, you're talking 4 years, and it's still pretty expensive. I wouldn't be surprised if there's DLC that bumps the price up too, but sometimes these AAA games you don't get anything better than that. So the reason why I want to play Lords of Shadow 2 is because I've covered Lords of Shadow 1. It makes a lot of sense in my mind that I'd want to cover the sequels of games that I've already covered. Garfield Kart has some relevancy because everybody knows who Garfield is, plus it's a Mario Kart style game, and certainly since there are no Nintendo games on Steam or PC, anything that's a clone of a Nintendo game is kind of appreciated. And that's only 99 cents, which is not too bad. Let's see. A lot of these games are small, point-and-click, story-driven things. Duke Nukem Forever, probably not worth it at $5, honestly. You're much better off getting like Alien vs. Predator instead. Now, you may notice that this is 80% off, and then this is 75% off, and then this is 80% off. Almost certainly the reason for that is there are 2 versions of Duke Nukem Forever on its page. So there's probably a complete collection Game of the Year version that includes DLC and such that is marked at 80% off instead of 75% off, but cost more. And this is an example of how Steam's website doesn't kind of present information accurately enough or explain things. It's a little deceptive. Gemini Heroes Reborn, great game, based off of a bad TV reboot series, or continuation of series. 99 cents makes a lot of sense. So that's a great deal. The first Worms game, if you want to own the first Worms game compared to the many sequels, is $1.59, so that's not terrible. A few of these games I think I have covered. Like, I think I've covered this, it's just not on this specific Steam account, which that when I first started my channel, stupidly, I was playing games on a different account, so now I'm trying to get everything on one account, and that's changed some things. There's about 5 games, frankly, that I've covered that I just want to rebuy, basically. Not high priority, though. It would be very nice if somebody gifted me a game that I've already covered that's on my wish list, because then I don't have to make any new footage and I can just say thanks and move on and save myself some time. So let's see. We've got a lot of games here, and each one of these I talk a lot about. Pretty much I talk about every single game. Sophie's Curse. This is one of those jump scare horror games for 99 cents that don't ever scare me. But it's rated very positively. This is kind of the example of where some of these jump scare games and some of the joke games and meme games get rated very positively because people know what they're getting and they're happy with it. Where honestly, if I was to try to cover this game, I probably wouldn't have too much fun with it. In fact, I should probably just click the remove button, but I won't do that right now. I'm in a weird position right now, certainly, because I'm certainly not aching for new games. If anything, I'm aching for more time. Here we have Umbrella Corps, Biohazard Umbrella Corps. They're very negatively reviewed. I believe mostly multiplayer game for $4.99. Some of these Resident Evil games that they make are just terrible. And then I'm not sure if this game, Bonzo Marks of Slavery, is a joke game or a troll game, or if it's a real game. So I think it's a real game, just touching on a slightly disturbing topic, which might be hard to cover, certainly. Let's see. But yeah, since I'm not really aching for games, the ones that are on discount also aren't really lining up with games that I absolutely would love to play. So it's kind of easy for me just to scroll through this and say, yeah, I'd love to own these games. Here, the Turing Test is another game I'd love to have. This is a pretty high priority. It's $3.99 though, so it's still kind of expensive. And I will fully admit that the autumn sale right now is not giving you anything for buying games, whereas some of the summer sales will give you trading cards and let you make badges and level up your player level, which then lets you have more friends on Steam. Not that that's really much of an issue. So there is a potential argument to be made that now is not the sale to buy anything, and instead you should just wait until December. Although there is a good it's a good gamble, but it's still a gamble. There's a very good chance that things like Killer Instinct here for $10, which is probably a decent price, might not be on discount at all in December. It might not be on discount at all in the summer sale that happens next year. It probably in the next 12 months though would be on discount as low or better, and that's why if you install the, I believe it's the Is There Any Deal plugin on Chrome, which honestly I just suggest you install all the Steam plugins on Chrome. Just go into the Steam plugin store and type in go into the Chrome plugin store and type in the word Steam and install anything that looks like it actually has to do with the Steam store. You can get a lot of information about what a historical low price might be. There might be better storefronts, certainly. I find that a lot of the deals for the Humble Bundles are really good for what you're getting. And certainly there are other stores out there that will end up giving you Steam keys, but you have to be careful on those storefronts to make sure you are actually getting Steam keys and not just getting a copy of the game via their website, if you're interested in maintaining all your games on Steam, which I kind of have to because I have so many of them. The Fear series, I think I should cover the Fear series. We're approaching Fear 1, we're approaching a 10-year anniversary on the Fear series. If I started covering it in 2019 and kind of burned through Fear 1, Fear 2, and Fear 3 and whatever DLC is associated with those games. Actually, I don't think that this actually came out originally in 2010. I think it came out maybe a couple of years earlier than that on the Xbox 360. But yeah, that's a good deal. Now, there's some weirdness here. Certainly, the first game is $13.74. The second game is $3.74. And the third game is $4.99. And The way I imagine they're accomplishing that is because they've marked the price up to $54.99, which very possibly may not have been the default price, or it may be that they've just never lowered the default price. There are definitely some developers who will pull tricks like that to make the percentage look higher than it really would be if under legitimate circumstances. So maybe I just buy Fear 2 or Fear 3 and Fear 3 and wait for another sale to get Fear 1. But yeah, that's a top priority. I covered this game, Shank 1, the prequel to this game, so I'd love to continue, and for $2.50, that's not too bad. You've got a little bit of a trouble playing a game like Mighty Number 9, which is mixed reviews at best, even for $5. But I do want to think about covering all the Mega Man games, and it would certainly make a lot of sense to play Mighty Number 9 at some point after doing the Mega Man games. Beyond Eyes is another artsy game that I'd love to cover, although again it might be pretty short, so even $3.74 is not the best deal. Speaking of not the best deal, 60 seconds has never really been on much of a discount, so $2.49 for that is actually a pretty good deal, because I've been watching this game since 2015 when it came out, and I've always wanted to own it and play it. It's a high priority. It's just, man, at $10 for what it is, it's not really worth it. Where Pac-Man: The Ghostly Adventures is really only there as a historical reference if I was going to play all of the Pac-Man games. And I wish there was an Explosion Man on Steam instead of just Missplosion Man. Not sure if I'm really going to get into the Arkham Asylum series of games, but $5 for the first one, Game of the Year edition, isn't terrible. $3.74 for Saints Row 4 is probably not bad, but remember there's probably a lot of DLC on that. So you might spend $3.74 and then have to spend another $10 to upgrade to the DLC. Evil Genius is a strategy, real-time strategy style game that's pretty old but worthwhile. Grow Up is another high priority one because I've covered the predecessor to this, Grow Home. I want to play Prototype 1 and Prototype 2. $10, however, is really no deal more than what you get during a regular sale. Not sure about JRPGs, but here we have the Tales of Berseria JRPG that came out a year ago for $12.49. I'm not sure if there's really any DLC here. You'd have to double check, but that's a pretty good discount. There's several Tales of series games out there. More Batman games. It would be quite a commitment to buy them all at the same time. Particularly, big commitment certainly to play something like Dragon Age Origins or Saints Row the Third, another good discount. Again, maybe some DLC knocks that price up. I want to cover all the Sherlock Holmes series. Not that they're usually that great. There is some inherent relevancy there. Maybe there's reason to play Fable Anniversary, maybe not. Here's another Sherlock Holmes game. I believe this is the most recent one, but maybe not. Maybe I want to play Far Cry Primal. There's a lot of series where it's like, do I want to play Far Cry 3 or Far Cry 4 or Far Cry Primal? I'm not 100% sure I would want to play Dark Souls 3. I didn't get through Dark Souls 1. It seems it'd probably be I probably wouldn't get through the game. Far Cry Primal is probably the best Far Cry to get if it's going to be your first Far Cry, and $12.49 doesn't sound terrible. Dark Souls 2, $9.99. And of course, some of these games start off cheaper, so 75% off gets the price lower, whereas some of these games start off very expensive. War for the Overworld is a high priority one, but it's still $7.49. And so I'm a pretty frugal, cheap person. I don't want to just randomly spend $5 on a game. I would say Alien vs. Predator Classic 2000 here at $1.24. That's probably a great deal to get. Judge Dredd, Dread vs. Death at $1.99. Probably good deals. Quake 1, Quake 2. Yeah, probably great deals there if you want to own some old games and play them. But if you're just a regular video game player, a lot of these are going to be so old that they stop having some relevance. Like Fallout 1 for $2.49. That is completely different from Fallout 3, 4, 5, and 76, I suppose. But that might be a good thing. Get the original Fallout for $2.50 or Fallout 2. That might be good. Some basic Sega throwback games, the Sonic series for $1.24 each. Not bad. Sonic CD. And even Sonic 4 Episode 2 here is $2.49, which probably means Episode 1 is another $2.49. It's kind of crazy Sonic 4 went episodic. I really hate episodic releases. I'm not sure I could actually nowadays even play South Park District of Truth on YouTube without doing a lot of censoring. And it's a big time commitment. But if you want to play that at home, $7.49 isn't a terrible price. Let's see. There's a lot of games here, and I'm sure most people looking through all of these are gonna say, what is this game? What is Never Ending Nightmares? I've never heard of that. And that's the point of doing episodes like this when there's a sale. Is like, here's games you probably haven't heard of. Here's games that are on discount. Here's something new to think about. Now, if you don't want to play something you've never heard of, like a game called Girls Like Robots, which happens to be a puzzle tile placement game, then yeah, you really don't need videos like this. You can just go buy, you know, the latest Call of Duty, Battlefield, Battlefront, FIFA. Like, we can name the top AAA games that come out every year. Buy the most recent Assassin's Creed game. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with any of those games in particular. I'm just saying, if you want to expand your mental and your video game lexicon, you have to go beyond your comfort zone and play something new. Is the 2015 Tales of series, Tales of Zestiria, for $12.49. Here's a psychological horror visual novel where you're dating a monster Cyclops anime girl. Not sure I really want to play any of the Warhammer series like this. Most of these games are on the wish list, but I haven't really made that commitment. Yeah, and I'm not sure you really need to play the Mafia series. But maybe. Mafia is a weird one because it's potentially a game series that has some relevancy, but it's also an easily forgotten series, so you could skip over it pretty easily. Here we have another Tales of series for $4.99, so I imagine there's potentially a bundle, or you could just get all the Tales of series pretty cheap. I will say that Japanese games, particularly more niche Japanese games that are not your AAA JRPG games, they don't have a tendency to go on sale that much. So God Eater 2 Rage Burst here, which is like Monster Hunter, except for you're fighting monsters instead of dragons, or demons instead of dragons. Like, it's 75% off, but it's still $12.49. But honestly, it's probably a good deal. You have to remember that unlike, say, bread, everybody makes bread. The price of bread could drastically change easily if, say, somebody rich like Bill Gates decided to flood the market with twice as much bread. You'd see the value of bread plummet. You can't really do that with video games because each video game is its own artistic piece. It's basically the equivalent of the Mona Lisa. There is only one Mona Lisa. There can be clones of the Mona Lisa, there can be forgeries of the Mona Lisa, but there can only be one real Mona Lisa. So it's a monopoly, frankly. All art that's being sold is a monopoly for that specific art thing. While there is some slight competition between God Eater and, say, Monster Hunter, it's not that great. And like I was saying, particularly Japanese developers, they don't like to devalue their products. They like to gouge the customer. And so if you can get even a few dollars off, you're probably doing good, particularly if it's a game you want to cover. I'd say Quantum Break is a good example also of that, where Quantum Break is a Microsoft Studios. Microsoft owns the developer of Quantum Break, I believe it Remedy Studios, and they really don't have to put their game on sale because Microsoft doesn't need the money. They don't care if the game doesn't sell. White Day 11th Name School, same. I believe this is a Korean horror game. Same thing. People, a lot of these more niche games won't really be on sale. But we will, once we get down to the bottom here, we will flip it on its edge and we'll start seeing games that really are just really cheap, like 99 cents or 49 cents. But aren't actually that discounted because they started off cheap to begin with. Here's a game where it's a point-and-click adventure. I'd love to cover it, but it is important to know that I don't believe Chapter 1 and 2 are the entirety of this game. So while you may be paying 99 cents for this, you may be paying another $2 or $3, would be my guess, to actually finish the story. And that's one of the sneaky, tricky things that they've started doing, or that pre-ordering and episodic releases and season passes and DLC, all of it together was designed to hide the true price of a game and raise the price of games and make it seem like you weren't raising the prices. Let's see. Is there anything else here that I want to point out? I'm gonna drink some water as we scroll down the Sherlock Holmes games, which we can see all of these are discounted. So, yeah. I'm gonna take a break. Maybe you want to take a break too and pause the video. This is gonna take a little longer than I thought. Okay. So, owning all the Sherlock Holmes games means every month, every other month, I could cover a Sherlock Holmes game and have a consistent idea on my channel, because as a YouTube content creator, it's kind of hard to make consistent footage without sticking to the same game. That's why some of the biggest of the... I don't believe this is a movie. This is a video game. It just has a movie-like trailer on the thumbnail. This is one of the Tom Clancy games, actually, from like Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege. Yeah, there's a bunch of big-time streamers that Captain Sparkles, for instance, does Minecraft. He's always done Minecraft. He's never been able to really get too far away from doing Minecraft, even if he's covering a different game. This is a game that I added back to my wish list even after I chose to remove it. And it's $2.49. It's probably still... there are reviews and complaints about the controls being rough, but I just feel I need to own it because of the visuals. But it may be a great disappointment. So yeah, as somebody who doesn't want to stick to playing the same game over and over again, or the same style of game, I might be willing to, for instance, play all the Warhammer games, but after that 3 or 4 years of playing all the Warhammer games that are available, I'd want to move on to something different. So when you have that as your desire, you're in this weird position where your YouTube channel changes. For me, it's almost on a monthly basis. The only thing that stays the same is every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday I stream Hearthstone and talk about video game news and look at new games that came out on Steam. New games that look like they're good go to the fall list when I make a special episode and take some extra time to look through the fall list. Games will be then promoted to the wish list, making the wish list even bigger. So there is also this desire to keep it under control and not let it grow out of hand, although that won't be too big of a problem. Here we have Prototype 1 for $4.99. It would make a lot of sense if I was planning on spending a lot of money in the sale to buy Prototype 1 and not buy Prototype 2. So yeah, with the exception of Hearthstone, every month my channel changes. I cover different games, so you've got to come back every month and continue to watch because you like my channel and you like me, or you leave and viewers leave, and that's kind of a pain. So if I was playing something like the Sherlock Holmes series, at least I could have 2 things that were consistent, but it's not a huge issue either. In general, I'd like more variety of people coming and going to my YouTube channel than just one massive group of people who love Hearthstone and hate everything else that's airing. Here we have like an unfinished game that I'd like to cover, but it is unfinished, so I have to know that. Here we have Tacoma I'd like to cover for $5.99. Here we have Mortal Kombat 10. I don't know if you really need to play Watch Dogs 1. The Senran Kagura series are all anime adult sex games, so I'd love to own them, but I wouldn't really be able to cover them. I covered Dead Island by itself, but I haven't covered the Definitive Edition, where they made some significant changes, so it makes some slight sense to want to cover that. I'm not sold, frankly, on the Grand Theft Auto series. It may very well be that you don't need to play any of them, or maybe just there's like the latest one is the one you should play. Deponia Doomsday is another Daedalic point-and-click adventure game, and I've covered all of Deponia and had a bundle for all of Deponia, and then they came out with more of Deponia, so there's more story to happen, and I wouldn't be surprised, frankly, if I played this final part and they left it on a cliffhanger, or they made a sequel anyways after that. Dreamfall, there's several Dreamfall games to cover. Arguably, because Watch Dogs 1 has really no connection to Watch Dogs 2, it makes sense just to play Watch Dogs 2 and skip 1. Although this is still pretty expensive at $18 for a game that's a couple years old and possibly has DLC. Now, they recently shut down the Dead Rising series. Well, the developer of the Dead Rising series. So it becomes questionable whether any of it needs to be covered. I kind of think I want to cover the first game, but by the time you're at the 3rd, 4th, and 5th game in that series, I think it made it to a 5th game. I think there's really kind of no reason for that, to cover all of those. So there definitely is some weirdness. Like GTA 3 is there really a reason to play or own GTA 3 if you don't have any nostalgia for that game? Maybe, maybe not. A lot of these are more on the questionable things. I'm always on the lookout to play more kids games, and Disney games have that search engine optimization relevancy where people on YouTube, kids on YouTube, might be typing in Disney Pixar Finding Nemo and find my videos, and then hopefully I can do a good and appropriate series of videos to cover that kind of game. So getting that cheap is not terrible. Or if you actually just have kids that play on PC. Honestly, I think kids should just play on whatever their friends are playing on. So for the most part, young kids are going to be playing on a Nintendo Switch right now. And then if you have a pre-teenager, teenager, or post-teenager college kid, quote unquote, they at that point probably know if all their friends are on Xbox One or Switch or PC or PlayStation, and whatever their friends are on, that's what you should just get them. It makes it kind of easy for shopping, though. It's like, if your kid is a young kid, get them a Nintendo. If your kid is an old kid, ask them what their friends are playing. And that stays pretty consistent for the past 30 years. There's a lot of the Yi series, Y''S, as far as hack and slash JRPGs, but I'm not sure that they beat things like Dragon Quest 11 or Final Fantasy as far as games worth playing and covering. Let's see. A lot of these are just kind of out there, and they stand alone as good games, but not particularly like the top of the list. Remember, 2/3 of the wish list is games that are like, yeah, they're good enough that they've reached that quality limit. I'd be willing to play them, but they're not in my top 10% Christmas list of games I want to cover. I definitely love these dark horror point-and-click adventure games, so something like the Coma Recut would be nice. And whereas some games like the Sword Art Online games, if I just put these games off long enough, I will actually be able to never cover them, and I'd be perfectly fine with that. Most of the anime tie-in games on PC have yet to be good. I think give it 5 more years, we'll start seeing a lot of anime games that anime tie-in games. And then frankly, it's dependent on, is this a anime that was made off of a good game, or is this a bad game that was made off of a good anime? Because those are really your two options. The Steins Gate visual novel series and Steins Gate Zero are good visual novels games that got turned into animes. The Clannad visual novel series got turned into a good anime, whereas Sword Art Online, .hack/sign were animes that got turned into games. This next game, Outcast Second Contact, actually I just got for free on Humble Bundle, so you can check that out and see if that's still available. So I just have yet to redeem the Steam key, so don't try to gift that one to me because I already have it. Let's see, what else? Here's a Clannad visual novel side story. I would say Clannad, the Clannad series of visual novels, are probably the top best visual novels to cover. So if I was going to play Japanese visual novels, which means almost all visual novels are Japanese visual novels, I'd probably play the Clannad and the Steins Gate series, and that'd be it. Dead Island Riptide Definitive Edition, a different Dead Island game. That was certainly one of the things I did when cleaning up the wish list, is just to make sure there aren't duplicates or games, because you could certainly make mistakes and have a game that is like the regular version and then have a definitive version. Most of the games on Steam don't allow for that, but there certainly are a few that get away with that. Here we have a Western visual novel, Lady Killer in a Bind. It's an adult sex dating romance visual novel. Right next to Genital Jousting, so yeah, we've just hit the pervert's row, and I always love to use that word lovingly. Fallout New Vegas? Ooh. If the Ultimate Edition with all the DLC is below $5 on Fallout New Vegas, you're great. If the Ultimate Edition is below $10, it's still a good deal. But if the Ultimate Edition for this is higher than $10, I would say that you're probably not getting much of a discount there. And sometimes you don't get any kind of discount if you bought the base game and then have to go buy the Ultimate Edition. I covered Dishonored 1, so I want to cover Dishonored 2. I think $13.99 is a pretty great deal for Dishonored 2. Dying Light is the spiritual successor of Dead Island. It's the first Dead Island game was made by the developers who went on to make Dying Light, and they've added a lot of support from it, so even at $16 or thereabout, that's not a bad deal. Someone graciously gifted me The Evil Within 1, so from that I feel the need now to cover The Evil Within 2. Not discounted greatly, but it is also barely a year old, so $20.79. If that includes the season pass, that's a pretty good deal, but it probably doesn't. I want to cover this game. I've recently found this, and this reminds me of another game I covered as far as a minimalistic puzzle game. So 98 cents, really good deal. That should be at the top of my list. Yeah, I think I could probably put about $100 worth of games in my shopping cart right now, and I would be satisfied with just spending $100. Whereas sometimes on summer sales I spend $200 to $300, which isn't insane if you're only buying games once a year and you're spending $200 or $300. That's just slightly more than the average of about $184 is what I think the statistics are, that the average teenager alone spends on video games. Since I'm a YouTuber and since it's technically my job to own games and cover them, that makes a lot of sense. Of course, it's hardly a write-off or anything like that on the taxes, because YouTube does not pay enough for, at least for me, not for small-time content creators. I'd love to cover the Prince of Persia series. I haven't played any of them except for the reboot here. I will mention, though, I don't think the original Prince of Persia is available on Steam, but that doesn't really matter. So I'd love the cover for... I doubt there's DLC in any of these, so you're talking $10 to play the trilogy. And for most people, you could probably skip the reboot, because if they ever do make a new Prince of Persia game, that they would ignore the reboot. But honestly, they won't ever make another Prince of Persia game, because the developers who made Prince of Persia went on to make the Assassin's Creed series, and they don't particularly, I think, want to go and have a Middle Eastern character and have the word Persia in the name of their title. Instead, they can have Assassin's Creed and have the characters change every game and have the location change every game. And so if there is any kind of controversy or accusations of racism, they can just move on in the next year to something different, and nobody will remember. So it gives them a lot of political correctness benefit to not go back to Prince of Persia. Although, honestly, at some point a remake is gonna have to be made, but it probably would just be a short reboot of one game, and that is it. Not apparently Prince of Persia was a quadrilogy, not a trilogy. I love the cover. Night Trap 25th Anniversary Edition is very historically important because there was actual like Senate hearings about it, or congressional hearings about this game and how violent they thought Night Trap was, which is kind of ridiculous. It being discounted at $5.09 is a pretty good deal, since it's only the 25th Anniversary Edition is only out for about a year. The game I like more that is a full motion video game than Night Trap is Double Switch, and that is coming out this year, so it would make a lot of sense for me to play all of Night Trap and then transition directly into Double Switch, which is a game I played when I was a kid quite a bit. Yeah, this is a pretty good deal. That being said, it is also kind of a bad game, so if you're not into owning historically important games and just trying them out, it really boils down to, are you willing to own a game that you might only play for a couple hours, maybe 30 minutes, and then giving up on it? Will you be satisfied? A lot of people aren't satisfied even when they make it all the way to the end of a game, particularly if the game is not good. Toonstruck, similar full motion video game that has some recognizable actors in it, and I think that gives it some historical relevancy. $3.39. It's a pretty good deal there. We're 66% off for Far Cry 3. Probably isn't much of a discount. It's probably what you would get normally. Every time there's a sale, I try to get the next couple of Assassin's Creed games. I try to cover 2 Assassin's Creed games every year just to catch up. There's some other series that I haven't even started that would definitely benefit from that schedule, certainly. Though, I have basically every Worms game on Steam, but you probably don't need to own but one, and it'd be really silly to try and cover all of the Worms games. Since it's mostly a multiplayer game in the first place. And then you have some weirdo games like Messiah that people remember for being weird, and that's why they're still around. I'm not sure that there really is much other reason for them to be around. And we have a bunch of Tom Clancy games, which I'm not sure I really want to cover all the Tom Clancy games or any of the Tom Clancy games. Maybe I just would like to play the Splinter Cell Tom Clancy games, maybe not even that. Maniac Mansion, one of the first, well, the very first point and click adventure game developed using the SCUM engine, which stands for Script Creation Utility for Maniac Mansion. So it coming back out and being $2.09 is not a bad price. It's honestly probably about $1.09 more expensive than you would expect for such an incredibly old and difficult game that you will not win without a walkthrough. But it also has that historical relevancy, so yeah, it's probably never going to make it down to $1. I own the non-3D version of this game. I'd like to own the 3D version too before I cover it, because that's going to be a little awkward to cover the non-3D game. There's a couple of games, I can think of 2 on Steam that have both a 3D and a 2D version of what is basically the same game. And generally speaking, I would not put up for such ridiculousness, but in the 2 instances in which it's done, it's kind of interesting. Here you have to be careful. A thumbnail like this, The Shadows of Pygmalion, makes it look like it's an action RPG game, but it's actually a visual novel. Whereas Disgaea, it might look like it's a visual novel, but it's actually a turn-based RPG. So, Like, if I was clicking on these, if we were looking at everything, there's definitely some deceptive looking thumbnails that you have to be careful and understand and know the games before you even buy them. Snake Pass is one of the top 10 games I'd love to cover. $7.99 for a game that is a year old is a pretty good deal. We can see that if it's even down to $20 from a year ago, that's a pretty good deal. Here we have Princess Maker 2 Refined, the remake of Princess Maker 2. I'd love to cover the Princess Maker series. It's kind of a weird, niche daughter raising simulator game from Japan. I've covered The Witcher 3, but I got The Witcher 3 via Good Old Games because I got it free with my video card. So before I would want to cover the DLC, and I'm not sure there's any reason for me to really cover the DLC at this point, I'd like to re-own this game on Steam, because I know eventually I'm going to buy this game on Steam. So I might as well just do it before it happens on accident. Mega Man Legacy Collection, there's a lot of Mega Man games. I own almost all the Lego games on Steam. $15.99 is still pretty expensive though. And to be completely honest, almost all the Lego games do not run well on my computer. Like, none of them have run well on that new video card that I just mentioned. And maybe it's a video card fault, maybe it's something else wrong with my computer, but it was running on my gaming laptop perfectly fine, and then it started hitching up every few seconds, depending on which Lego game. But I'm too pot committed, and I might as well own the rest of the Lego games, because again, I will eventually buy all the Lego games. So I might as well just jump into it. And this is a terrible, terrible shopaholic way to look at things, but it's kind of the case. Cradle is a unique indie game that I've wanted to cover for a long time. It doesn't really have the best name, so I've forgotten the name of it several times. And honestly, if you asked me tomorrow what's the name of that game that you were talking about, I probably wouldn't remember. $5.19 is probably the best you're going to get for something like that. Same as the case of like Detention. Dishonored here, Death of the Outsider, is $15 about. That's not a great deal. Dragon Ball Fighter Z, I'd love to cover that game, and it's probably still a little too expensive. It's been almost a year since this came out, and it's still $24. But then again, because it has that Dragon Ball license and it's a Japanese game, I wouldn't be surprised if this, in a year's time, is still not below $20 when on sale. So this might be the best you're going to get. And this probably is the best entry-level fighting game to play right now. I played the game Limbo that was from the developers of Inside, so I'd like to play Inside since it's kind of a spiritual successor. I'd like to see if Resident Evil 0 runs well on my computer. Resident Evil 4 did not run well on my computer. Resident Evil 5 didn't run that well, and Resident Evil 6 ran pretty awfully. And so I'd like to see if Resident Evil 0 and Resident Evil HD remasters run any better. It's very possible it's the same video card issue that makes Lego and Resident Evil games run poorly, but oddly no other game I ever cover runs into problems, and I've covered quite a lot of them, so I can't ever figure out what it is. And see, we're hitting about the 60% discount here. I'm not sure it's really worth it to buy Kerbal Space Program, even at $16. I covered Kerbal Space Programs, and it made some of my worst videos that people still see because people keep commenting about how bad the videos are, and so then it gets recommended to more people. Let's see. I think probably once we've hit the 60% price, though, you're really not getting the best deals, or at least you're not effectively going through a wish list once you've hit the 60% point. You're just not effectively going through the wish list at that rate. So yeah, we could continue to scroll down here and look at games. Here's another adult sex game that also has match 3 things. I covered Honey Pop, and that really didn't require that much censorship, so I wouldn't. If it turned out that somebody gifted me this game for 79 cents and then I only had to censor out 5 or 6 images or scenes, that's not terrible. The fear, however, for any of these adult games is that I would have to censor out most of the content, and then that's too much work. And I don't know how I would cover a game like that if I did have to censor out most of the content. I'd probably just have to talk about it with not showing any gameplay footage, which would be a new way of covering games, certainly. There are some hidden object games that are still on the wish list, but generally they are series games, like this Art of Murder hidden object series. Like you can see there's 3 of them, so that has some relevancy. They're also not particularly expensive, whereas Big Fish Games is a publisher of hidden object games, and they charge like not $30, but $13 a game, and so that just gets really expensive. Although, in all fairness, if I was to buy all the Chronicles of Mystery games and the Art of Murder games, I probably am spending more than $13, so it might just be a matter of how they present the expense versus how much the expense really is. It's a lot of what I call single screen Unity puzzle games that I like to cover. 49 cents, for instance, for Line X is probably, well, you kind of know this is the best deal you're ever going to get. And it's 51% off. And you'd say, oh, but it could be higher. No, it can't, because if I recall correctly, the way this works, when you sell a game on Steam, for every transaction, most credit card processors and transactions work this way at least, they want 30 cents by default, and then like 30% on top of that. So on the top of the value of a sale here. So 30% of 50 cents, let's just roughly put that there, would be 15 cents, right? Yeah. So 30 cents plus 15 cents is 45 cents, which leaves the developer of this game getting massively 4 cents in profit for the sale of this. That's what his take home is. So yeah, I don't think Steam even lets you go below 49 cents. And frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if when people are selling games for 49 cents, they're barely taking home even a penny. But people will certainly do that. I'm not exactly sure how that happens. Sometimes it feels like sometimes people put in the wrong numbers and discount their game in ways they didn't intend to discount it, or didn't realize it would go that cheap. Nier Automata, a game I definitely want to cover, came out last year. It's 50% off. It's $29.99. Probably the best deal you're gonna get, frankly, for the next couple of years. So you're either gonna pay $60 for it, or you're gonna pay $30 for it, and you very possibly are gonna pay $30 and buy DLC and get it back up to $60. So yeah, sometimes that's the best you can hope for. Whereas something like Tabletop Simulator is always 50% off during sales, anything that really has hit the 50% off is probably always going to be at least 50% off during the sale, so it's not a big deal. I would definitely put some priorities on things like Akiba's Trip here, which is $14.99. It's still pretty expensive considering it's from 2015, but it's probably the best you're gonna get. Like, here we have Lego games, still pretty expensive. The best deal with Lego games, and Lego games are worth playing, but I would recommend people get a used Xbox 360. Go buy a bunch of used copies of all the Lego games your hearts can desire, and you'll probably get each game for like $5 used. And if you don't need a console already and you already have the Xbox One, most of the Lego games are backwards compatible. You would have to either do some research or potentially just gamble on that, but not big deal. Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice for $15 is probably a great deal. Hob for $10 is a great deal. I covered It'll Do 1, I definitely want to cover It'll Do 2. Yeah, I'm seeing things that are definitely worth $10 that I kind of prefer to purchase over buying something that is only 99 cents. Like, I'm fine with playing a game like Type Fighters for 99 cents, but honestly I'd prefer to have It'll Do 2. That's like a top 10% game versus Type Fighters or 10 other similar games. This game Poi is $5, is probably good at that. Prey at $20.09 is probably worth it, but you'd have to be careful about the DLC. Notice this is also 33% off, which makes me suspect that the complete edition of the game probably is more expensive and 50% off. Psychopath's Mandatory Happiness, maybe relevant, maybe not. Again, a game based off a good anime, so probably not that great of a game. Now, I didn't like Reigns, the original Reigns game, but I have heard that this is actually a lot better, the sequel Reigns Her Majesty, so, and it definitely is still getting updates, and it's only about a year old, and it's $1.49, so yeah, that's a good deal. That would be something I'd love for somebody to gift to me, and that's not asking a ton of money. Whereas I'd also love somebody to gift me Res Infinite, but that's asking a lot more at $12.49. I played the game from the developer, the previous game this developer made, called Regency Solitaire, and now they've come out with Shadowhand, and it's a pretty good discount, but it'll probably go lower. I'd be more motivated into playing something like Slime Rancher and the Sexy Brutale. Both of those look like they're in pretty good prices. Sure, I'd love to own all the Senran Kagura series, but I probably wouldn't cover them because they're all adult sex games, comedy sex games type things. Not 100% sold that I want to actually play the Game of Life, but at $2.50 that's a lot better than buying, say, the actual board game, the Game of Life, which will cost you $10 and almost certainly never be discounted because of Hasbro's monopoly there. No pun intended, they also have a monopoly on Monopoly. This one might be worth it at $2. It has some historical relevancy because this is, I believe, the developer who, some of the developers who made Prince of Persia, the original Prince of Persia, not the reboots, or the reboot of the reboot. There are several underwater style games that I'd be willing to cover a few of them. But definitely a lot of games here too that just kind of don't make sense. Here we have one that apparently you can't buy separately, but is 50% off if you buy the bundle. for $2.99. So you can't just click add to cart. Which I wouldn't really recommend anybody clicking add to cart unless you're going to add to cart and then look at every game and make sure you have the DLC and everything you want from that. Because you don't want any buyer's remorse if you can avoid it. Let's see. Is there anything else that we'll see that deserves coverage? Attack on Titan, Wings of Freedom for $30. Probably not a great discount, but also probably a game that would not get too discounted any more than that. The thing I have noticed about Steam is that if games don't want to, and very often the developers of games don't want them to, games will simply never devalue. They'll never go on sale. There is definitely a collection of games on the wishlist right now that have never been on sale and will never be on sale. Particularly in instances where you have a game that is being also sold on something like Uplay for Ubisoft or EA Origin or the say Bethesda launcher is another one. I'm not sure if Adventure Time is still popular or not. I would be willing to play a kids game based on Adventure Time. I think there's 2 of them on Steam. $15 isn't terrible, but I'm not sure of the relevancy there or if it matters. Again, here's another Sword Art Online. I don't think they're terrible games. I just don't think that they're inherently great. I actually think this is a terrible game, and I'm surprised that it's just rated mostly positive. I would still not really be super happy spending $7.50 for Bullet Witch, but I do want to cover it because it really was like the worst game I ever played on the Xbox 360. So I don't know why it's better now or why people are receiving it better now. That's really where it comes down to, is that how well are people receiving things, more than an actual example of the game itself. It's just, how did you advertise your game, and did you deliver on how you advertised it? If you show your game is going to be a rough troll joke of a game, people might still review it positively if that's what they're expecting. If you say your game is going to be the next best AAA game whatsoever and it turns out to be Mighty Number 9, well, then people are not going to be happy about that. Here we have another Sword Art Online game. Here we have a Naruto to Boruto fighting game. I'm not a super fan of the Naruto series, so I would much prefer to play the Dragon Ball series or Dragon Ball Z series in a fighter game. The Danganronpa games, I'd like to play all of them. There's like this one and this one and then this one, and they're kind of adventure, point and click adventure puzzle games. And then there's this side game which I guess plays the same. Actually, I don't know. It's just some really crazy looking art style, and I'm willing to commit to that entire series. But you can see, first game is $10, second game is $10, third game is newer, so it's $30, and the side game is $15. This is probably the sequel to that previous game we looked at, and they're probably bundled together. Now, I made a mistake, and I had a bunch of games that were free on my wish list, and then I clicked to install them and then uninstalled them, and now I can't find those games because they're not listed in the library. So I would heavily recommend do not install, then click the cancel button is actually what I was doing. I would click install and then I click cancel, and apparently now I'd have to go find like some purchase history. Here's a game that people like to speedrun because it's slightly glitchy that I'd like to cover for real. Here's more of the Princess Maker series. This would be the first one in the series for $5.49, the remake of the first one. And then I think it goes all the way to Princess Maker 5, but there's not really a need to go through them all very abruptly. I could play one a year for 5 years. Here we have a walking simulator basically that people love, and it's $10.99. They say it's a visual novel, but I would say it's closer to a walking simulator. So yeah, What Remains of Edith Finch. I wouldn't suspect this getting any cheaper for a while, but we're down to 45% discounts. And at a certain point, a 42% discount on the Hat in Time gets a lot harder to justify. $17.39, probably not a terrible price for this game. I definitely want to play this game. It's in the top 10% of games I'd love to cover, but yeah, the price still feels a little expensive. Battleship Brigade at $11.99 makes a little bit more sense, but it's still kind of expensive. Or if we want to go really expensive, here we have Senran Kagura Peach Beach Splash, which is Splatoon except with anime girls in bikinis, $24, and probably not going to get very much cheaper anytime soon. Myst 3 at $8.99 is a great deal, I would say, because of the fact that Myst 3 Exile and Myst 4 Revelation have not been available for purchase on Steam, I think, ever before, and there's no guarantee that that license is going to last for forever. So I definitely want to own these. These are top 1 and 2 games that I'd love to cover, because I've covered Myst 1 and Myst 2, and I love the Myst series. So yeah, top priority here. These would be the first 2 to go in the in the shopping cart. Whereas something like The Infectious Mind of Dr. Decker, maybe that would go cheaper in a year. The sequel from the same developer, The Shape-Shifting Detective, is out recently now. All the Nancy Drew games, I'd like to own and cover all of them, although some of these are rather expensive at $11.09. Even $4.19 seems to be pretty expensive for what is a cheap point-and-click kids adventure game. Negligee, a game I probably couldn't cover on YouTube. Well, almost certainly couldn't cover. The first game to be released fully uncensored on Steam, meaning that it actually can't be sold in 23 countries that don't allow full uncensored nudity, including Japan, which clearly Negligee was inspired by Japanese visual novels. But yeah, it's at least technically on the books that in Japan things have to be censored. Speaking of not being censored, Super Kinky for $2.99 is probably still not worth it. I'd probably only want to pay 49 cents for that game if I was to ever buy it at all, which is a bit of an if. But that Super Kinky also is probably the example of the lowest I went as far as bad quality games on the wishlist. The rest of these have reasons for being here. These are vetted games. We can go through all the Nancy Drew things, and again, there's probably a Nancy Drew bundle, so if I bought several of these at $4.19, it might bring down the cost to buy the bundle and get the rest of the ones that are at $11.99. But I also don't suspect that I'll go through those games terribly quickly. Here's a surprise. This game and several other LucasArts, Lucasfilms / Disney games were just snuck onto the storefront like November 16th, so about a week ago. And Sam & Max Hit the Road is a very good point-and-click adventure game that everybody should play, I would say. And it's already 40% off for $3.59. That's pretty insane. And I believe this also is a LucasArts game that was snuck on. The Indiana Jones series of games were snuck on, and they're already discounted. So yeah, great deal just for the fact that you don't have to wait. These games were just added. I suspect, but this will never be proven, what was going on is Telltale Games probably had something like what would be called an option or first right of refusal as the publisher or seller of LucasArts, Lucasfilms games. They had some kind of claim, and then as soon as Telltale Games went bankrupt and went into liquidation, it just happened. It could be that there actually was no connection there, but Telltale Games was from people who had worked at LucasArts, and they did go on to make their own Sam & Max game, so there might have been a reason there. Could also just be that Disney just wanted to make some money and get these on the storefront before the next sale. Disney has shut down their own video game development department, so now they're just in the business of licensing to other people to make Star Wars games and such. Here we have Resident Evil 7. Fingers crossed Resident Evil 7 would run well on my computer. I'm hoping. One of the things I'm trying to do is to find a good point to buy a gigabyte, specifically GTX 1080 or just 1080 in general video card, and upgrade from my gigabyte 970 GTX, or maybe it's just a 970. The reason why I like to go with Gigabyte is I trust them as a product maker. My other hardware is mostly Gigabyte hardware. I think going from a 970 to a 1080 goes a generation and a step up, so that should theoretically fix any problems with any games that run poorly on my computer. Most of them, again, don't. I wouldn't be surprised one bit if I could run Resident Evil 7 fine, and Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6 just run poorly because they're programmed on a bad engine. $20 is sort of a good deal. It's 35% off, but you also got some DLC. Maybe it's worth it to play the DLC. There also is like a free demo of Resident Evil 7 that you can play, and I'd recommend playing because it's not like a demo of the game, it's more of a separate game teaser of what the Resident Evil 7 first came out as. So I would definitely recommend find that free Resident Evil 7 entry thing. It's weird that you don't get it when you install or purchase Resident Evil 7, or it's not some kind of linked to item. Let's see, we've got a lot of games here, and compared to the end of the year Steam wishlist cleanup, I am skipping most of these, but I am still certainly talking about a lot of these games too. And once we get to 0%, that's it. If there's no discount, there's no reason to buy a game on the wishlist right now. Of course, if you just want to gift me a game, and if you wanted to spend some extra time and browse through my wishlist, the links are down below and you could go through all of them. Not sure I could play this on YouTube, but I probably could. Yeah, I'd like to play this game, but I'd like it more discounted. Yeah, once we hit that 30% discount, it starts making a lot of sense. Maybe Bloodstained Curse of the Moon makes sense because it's less than a year old and it's less than $7. Maybe Okami HD makes sense. I'd like to play that, certainly. I'd like to own these games. I'm not 100% sure I actually want to play them, and $7 seems a little expensive. This is going to get down to the point where a lot of these games, I'd like to own them, but only at specific price points. That's certainly one thing I learned as I was going through the wish list. It's just like, yeah, I'd like to own these games, but they've got to be at a more reasonable price. If some of them are way too expensive. This one's early access and should be on the fall list, not the wish list. I think I would totally be willing to play Dragon Quest 11, considering I nominated it for Game of the Year this year on Steam. $41.99. It's pretty expensive, but it is a long JRPG game, so I think you definitely get $41.99 out of worth of gameplay out of it. It's just you're almost paying premium, which isn't too bad. This came out September 4th, so even a 20% discount for something that's only a couple months old is pretty good. 10% discounts in general, just speaking discount percentages alone, 10% doesn't mean anything at all. You can assume that everything is marked up by at least 200%. So a 10% discount on 200% markup is really only 5% off. So yeah, when you take it's an insignificant amount. Here's the sequel to 60 Seconds, which came out in September, and it's $11.24. I'm not sure it's really necessary to play 60 seconds and then move on to play 60 parsecs. Here's a game I probably almost certainly couldn't play on Steam, on YouTube, but I'd love to own it. I'd love to report back. I definitely want all of the Shanti platforming games. These are the closest thing you'll get to a Super Mario Brothers game, is the Shanti series from Way Forward. 25% off isn't a great price, certainly for the newest Ultimate Edition of, I believe, the first game that was originally on like the 3DS. Curse of Monkey Island is the one Monkey Island game I skipped over. $5.24 is not terrible there, but also this would probably get cheaper. Maybe this is another one of the LucasArts games that just got added without any announcement at all, and you would have thought there would have been a lot more fanfare, because those were definitely gaps in Steam's lineup. Things that you definitely I've wanted for several years. Let's see, what else do we have here? There's another horrific visual novel game. Disneyland Adventures, I think, if you've got kids, would probably be a pretty good game to get. But yeah, discounts are not great. This is getting down to, oh, I've got to get something for Christmas. I'm not willing to wait a year, so let's get Disneyland Adventures. And in all fairness, $15 versus taking your child to actually Disneyland is probably a lot cheaper. Even if you happen to work at Disneyland, it's probably cheaper and easier to get that. There's some other basically Disney Pixar games, certainly, that you can find. Lego games and Disney Pixar games are the two ones that you would probably want to get your kids into if you're having them play on PC. But I honestly don't think there are enough kids games on PC to justify having them, particularly young kids. Escape from Monkey Island is another Monkey Island game I skipped over, and I think I didn't know existed. Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, probably not a great game, but people do have some nostalgia for it, so another LucasArts Disney game now available. I'm not sure if there's really any relevancy to play House Flipper anymore. That was popular amongst streamers for a short time, but it may have come and gone. Same might be said for Dead Cells, where it doesn't really need to be played, and people can just move on to the next rogue-like game. Let's see. I'm trying to find anything else worth mentioning. Here's a RPG Maker puzzle horror game, which most RPG Maker games I don't want to play at all, but this one actually got turned into an anime, so maybe it bucked the trend, but I'm not sure. Cuphead, absolutely would love to bang my head against playing a game like Cuphead, which would be moderately difficult. And $15.99 is not terrible, considering how good this game is. Also, there's going to be a free DLC update to it, so that makes some sense too. Here's Princess Maker 5, 15% off for $25.49, and that came out May 4th. This one's a VR game, and most VR games are not on the wish list, but I kind of want to own this one anyways. It may be playable without VR, but I don't think it actually is. So it'd be kind of silly to buy that. But it's there. Guacamelee. I covered Guacamelee 1, although it was the updated version of Guacamelee 1, the Super Mega Ultimate Edition or something. It's called something like that. I want to cover Guacamelee 2. That being said, $17 is probably way too expensive for that game during a sale. Here's another Indiana Jones game from LucasArts. Darksiders 3. I absolutely want Darksiders 3. If Myst 3 and Myst 4 are 1 and 2 on my wish list, Darksiders 3 is number 3. Unfortunately, it's not out yet. And actually, if it's coming out November 27th, it is coming out the day after the Steam sale. So maybe I'll get it in the winter sale. And see, we're hitting the bottom of the barrel here on discounts. Killer 7, a niche popular game that has just been brought to PC. A lot of these niche Japanese games and well, a lot of niche games and a lot of Japanese games and a lot of niche Japanese games are starting to show up on PC. So yeah, this is 10% off. You probably will get discounted more. This one's early access, so it should really be on the fall list. This one's a pretty new game, so I do want to play Wander Song. I don't know if $18 is the right price though. I'm not sure I really want to play 2 Points Hospital at all. It may just be an overhyped game, and $31.49 is asking quite a lot there. Then we have the Nonary games, which are not discounted at all. So when you sort this away, it goes from discount to games that were ranked high. But I guess that doesn't really help you that much. And see, I'm just looking at games. There might be some DLC that we skipped, and we almost certainly did. I don't think there's any video or software in my wish list. I don't know why it was just games, but we'll leave it there. And then the question will come down to what games are actually free. And some of these are free, but then they have an episode 2 on them. Or some of these are free to start, but it's just the first level in the game. So you have to be careful there, because also you don't want to just install something and then it turn out to not be something I actually want to play, and then it leaves the wish list. That being said, I'm fairly certain some of the games we'll see here are actually pretty discounted, but I guess if they're not on sale, it kind of doesn't matter. So skip, the way you would do this, I suppose, is we need to skip down to games like this that start at the lowest possible price, to my understanding. And we could certainly see, hey, yeah, let's add the 49 cents. Let's add the 49 cents. These games will never be any cheaper than 49 cents. So I could add a considerable number of small games. Do I need a bunch of small games? Not really. I have plenty of games. I will eventually run out of games if I don't buy any in a year or two, but it could be a balance. I could spend easily $50 buying 150 cents games, and then spend $50 buying like $5-10 games, or $50 could be spent buying one really good AAA game that's not discounted very much. It really just comes down to what would interest me and what wouldn't. I would recommend, if somebody wants to support me, and remember this whole thing is about how you can support me in a one-time donation by gifting me games on Steam. This would be the way you'd want to shop. Come down to the things that start 49 cents, add something to the cart, and just gift that 49 cents, gift that $1 game, and that would be super helpful. I also wouldn't be surprised if things like Kane and Lynch Deadman don't ever really get below $1 much, or Just Cause, because these have some name recognition and they're from big AAA publishers, so I wouldn't be surprised if the publishers saying no, the price can't go below 98 cents. Here's a game that is almost brand new. This is a very good deal. This is an Arkanoid clone with some RPG elements and Legend of Zelda elements, so I would be okay with spending $1 there. There are definitely, and yes, we are going through the list a second time, but not all the way. I'm just gonna finish my idea here. There are definitely games here, Gemini Heroes Reborn, that I could certainly buy right now, spend $100 and remove, I would guess, probably not 100 games from the wish list if I spent $100, but I could potentially remove 50, maybe 40, maybe 30 games from the wish list and just add it to the library of games to cover. And I always want my video game library to be as full as possible, because like any library where you go and check out a book, I want to be able to look at the games library and say, hey, I have all these options. I can play anything that I am interested in playing right now. Whereas if my library gets too small, I get forced into playing a game that maybe I'm not in the mood of playing, and then that becomes a bias that might have me not be in a very good happy mood to talk about that game or criticize that game. Here's a game that's pretty old that I'd like to own, called Shadow Man. I played this M-rated game on the Nintendo 64 when I was not over 18, and the toy store did not have a problem selling it to me. I didn't even know it was an M-rated game. I just knew it was on sale, and a couple times I bought games that were on sale and then I looked at the cover again and I'm like, oh, this is an adult game. And then of course I did the unresponsible thing and plugged it in and played it from beginning to end, instead of taking it back. $1.24 might be the best deal that you get for Shadow Man ever. There's an interesting question: when does it stop being a reasonable deal? Sonic games at $1.24 starts to look like it's not as good of a deal. Some of these PopCap games, maybe not as good of a deal. I would say personally, at $1.99, when you hit that $2 mark, that's when you've reached a point. Now, Drake of the 99 Dragons is supposed to be one of the worst games ever, and $1.40 might not be worth it for most people, but as a video game critic, I feel like I need to at least experience it to see if it really is that bad. Yeah, it's kind of hard having seen the variety of prices and how expensive some games can be while still being on discounted. It's kind of hard to say that anything below $2 though is not a good deal. Like, it really is the best you're gonna get. That being said, also as a video game critic, there's a lot of games here that most people wouldn't want, most people wouldn't play, and don't really need to exist. Here's a good example of a game that's not discounted at all, and it's still right in that $2 range. So this game is always priced at a good price by that standard. And see, we'll see a lot of $1.99, and then I wouldn't be surprised after $1.99 it jumps up to like $2.50. I will say though, a lot of these games, they are on the wish list. I do want to cover them, but they're not the top tier. I would really love to cover them right now style games. They're at the bottom of the list or at the middle of the list at best. I'm really not like getting Galaga, getting Pac-Man for $1.99, getting Dig Dug for $1.99. It's not terrible. Getting Miss Pac-Man for $1.99, not terrible. And see, getting these games, I feel like I just want to own them, so I feel good about supporting the industry, so then I can go find a ROM somewhere and play it however I want to play it. Sometimes these re-releases are not the best quality in the first place. Let's see, I think this is like a electronics style game bomb defusal thing that I wanted to check out. It's $1.99. It doesn't have but 6 user reviews and only 17% are positive, so it might actually be a horrible game. So maybe that shouldn't be on the wish list. There might be a few oddballs like that, certainly, but this is mostly a curated experience. Here we've run into a run of games that are just $1.99 in general. And then yeah, this went down to $2. I'm actually surprised that it didn't immediately jump from $2 to something higher. It goes from $2 to $2.09. And yeah, there definitely are some good games. Oops. So yeah, there definitely are some good games. I'll point out right now I have 13 cents in my Steam wallet. I don't keep a lot of money in my Steam wallet. I usually just buy games. But yeah, that's it. I would love some feedback. Yes, this is mostly just window shopping / e-begging, but I don't really know how to cover sales, and I needed to spend the time and look at the sales myself. And I'm trying on my YouTube channel to make anything that costs me time, that makes me spend time, try to make that in the content to keep to keep content flowing, basically. So any comments or recommendations on this would be greatly appreciated. How else could I have covered this cell, how could I have improved it, and that's about it. So I'm going to end my episode like I always do. I'm going to ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos because that helps me with YouTube. So when you subscribe, please click the notification bell. If you want a friend or follow me on things like Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Google+, Steam, or Battle.net, all of those links are down below in the description box. And as I've been saying throughout this episode, if you want to support me, which would be greatly appreciated, you can support me down below through a link to Patreon for as little as $1 a month, which would be helpful, or you can do a one-time purchase of either a game off the wish list or just a game in general, or a gift card, and gift that to me via Steam by friending me first and then clicking give as a gift. That's it for this recording. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.